Some dinners feel ordinary until one tiny moment changes everything you thought you knew about the people sitting across the table. Mara realized that the moment she stepped into Daniel and Elise's home. She had been their neighbor for almost 2 years, waving from across the street, sharing the occasional morning chat, and helping to bring in packages when they traveled. They were the couple everyone admired, steady, kind, effortlessly warm. But tonight felt different, even before she knocked on their door. The evening air was chilly, the kind that wrapped around her like a quiet warning and made her heart beat just a little faster than usual. Mara tried to slow it down as she stood on their front porch, smoothing her coat and telling herself this was just dinner. Nothing more. Elise opened the door with her usual bright smile. "Come in, Mara. We're so glad you made it." Her voice was soft, excited, and comforting. Mara stepped inside, instantly wrapped in the scent of rosemary, warm bread, and something else she couldn't quite place. It felt like stepping into a memory she hadn't lived yet. Daniel appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. He was calm, steady, and thoughtful, the kind of man who always listened before he spoke. "Perfect timing," he said with a smile. "Dinner's almost ready." Mara smiled back, though her chest gave a small, unexpected flutter. She brushed it off. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she was simply grateful to be invited. It had been a long week, and being around good people always helped. They guided her to the dining room. Candles glowed softly on the table. Their home wasn't fancy, but it felt alive, warm, safe, full of something she couldn't name. Elise poured her a glass of sparkling water and sat opposite her. Daniel took the seat beside his wife, but at a gentle diagonal from Mara. Close enough to talk easily. Not close enough to feel strange. Yet somehow, Mara still felt something stir. Conversation flowed easily at first. They laughed about neighborhood news. They teased about the upcoming winter festival. Daniel joked about how their dog had tried to help him cook earlier and nearly ruined the stew. Mara relaxed a little. It felt like breathing fresh air. Still, every now and then, she caught Daniel watching her with an expression she didn't understand. Not inappropriate. Not heavy. Just curious. Like he noticed something in her tonight he hadn't before. She tried to focus on Elise, who was radiant in her soft sweater, talking about a new art project she was working on. Mara loved how Elise spoke with her whole heart, hands moving gently, eyes shining. And yet, every time Daniel spoke, every time his voice dipped into that calm, thoughtful tone, Mara felt a small shift in the air around her. Halfway through dinner, Elise excused herself to grab dessert from the kitchen. The room suddenly felt quieter. Still. Almost too still. Daniel leaned back slightly, studying Mara with a warm, steady look. "You seem different tonight," he said gently. "Are you okay?" Something about the way he asked made her chest tighten. Not from fear. Not from discomfort. Just something new. Something unnamed. Mara tried to laugh it off. "Oh, I'm fine. Just a long day." But Daniel didn't look away. His voice softened even more. "Mara, if something's on your mind, you can talk to us. You're not alone." For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Why did those words land so deeply? Why did being seen, really seen, feel like a sudden spark in a dark room? Before she could form a response, Elise returned with a tray of warm apple tart, breaking the tension gently, unknowingly. But Mara's heart was still beating just a little faster. She smiled, trying to steady herself as Elise set the dessert down. Yet inside, she knew something had shifted, something she wasn't sure she was ready to name. And as they shared dessert, laughed again, and talked about simple things, Mara couldn't shake the feeling that the night had more in store for her. More than she expected. More than she understood. And maybe, more than she was prepared for. Near the end of the evening, as the candles flickered softly and the air warmed around them, Mara felt a moment coming, quiet, unexpected, and powerful enough to change the way she saw this dinner forever. A moment she never saw coming. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. Sometimes the smallest shift in someone's voice can change the way a whole evening feels. Mara didn't expect her heart to still be beating fast as the dessert plate sat empty on the table. She kept telling herself it was nothing, just nerves or stress or maybe the coziness of the evening getting to her. But the truth sat quietly in her chest, unspoken and warm. Elise stood and gathered the dishes with a cheerful hum. She always moved with soft energy, like she was painting the air with every step. Daniel rose too, offering to help, but she waved him off. "You two keep talking," she said. "I've got this." Mara smiled politely, but something inside her shifted again. Talking alone with Daniel wasn't something she had prepared for, especially after the way he'd looked at her earlier. He sat back down across from her, leaning on his forearms, the candlelight brushing warm gold along his features. Not dramatic. Not intense. Just present in a way that made the room feel smaller, quieter. "You really do seem tired," he said softly. "More than usual." Mara exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "It's been a rough week," she admitted. "Work has been, a lot. And being alone in the evenings doesn't help. The house gets too quiet." Daniel nodded with that steady, listening calm of his. "I get that," he said. "Silence can be heavy sometimes." She expected him to shift the subject. But he didn't. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, studying her with gentle honesty. "Mara, you're a strong person. But you don't always have to carry things alone." Her fingers tightened around the napkin in her lap. He wasn't doing anything wrong. His voice wasn't flirtatious or strange. There was no hidden meaning. But the sincerity in his tone, the care, it touched a soft place she rarely let people see. Before she could respond, Elise returned, sliding into her seat with a bright smile. "Okay," she said, clapping her hands lightly, "I have an idea." Mara blinked, shaking off the heaviness. "What kind of idea?" Elise's eyes lit up. "Let's play a little game. Nothing dramatic. Just something fun. It's called The Moment You Noticed. We go around and share a moment from the past week that made us pause." Daniel chuckled softly. "You always pick the thoughtful games." "That's because they work," she teased. Mara relaxed a bit. This was safe. Simple. Warm. Elise went first. She talked about an older couple she'd seen at the supermarket, still holding hands like they had been married for 50 years. The way her voice grew soft at the memory made Mara smile. Daniel's turn came next. He shared a story about a stranger he'd seen helping someone pick up spilled groceries in the parking lot. He said it reminded him that kindness didn't need an audience. Then it was Mara's turn. She hesitated. Not because she didn't have a moment, but because the moment she noticed most clearly had happened only an hour earlier, at this very table, when Daniel had asked if she was truly okay. She couldn't say that. So she cleared her throat and chose another memory, one safe and harmless. "I saw a little girl give her umbrella to a street musician during the rain," she said. "It made me feel hopeful." Elise's eyes softened. "That's beautiful." Daniel nodded too, but the way his gaze lingered on her made Mara feel something she didn't quite know how to name. The game ended with gentle laughter, and soon the evening shifted again, soft music playing in the background, the room dim with candlelight, the conversation drifting into stories about childhood memories and holiday traditions. At one point, Elise excused herself again, this time to check something in the oven for tomorrow's lunch. The moment she left, the room fell quiet in that familiar way that made Mara's pulse skip. Daniel looked at her, but this time his expression wasn't curious. It was something deeper. Something understanding. "You know," he said quietly, "you don't have to pretend around us." Her breath caught. She didn't know what he meant. Not exactly. But she felt the truth in his tone, like he saw through the gentle smiles she used to cover the exhaustion inside her. Before she could speak, footsteps returned, Elise's light steps, cheerful as ever. But Mara's heart was already in motion. Already somewhere new. Somewhere uncertain. The night wasn't over yet. And something told her the moment that would stay with her the longest hadn't even happened. Not yet. Some evenings don't rush toward their turning point, they drift toward it, slow and certain, like a tide you don't notice until it's touching your feet. Mara felt that tide rising around her. The dinner plates were gone. The candles burned lower. The room had quieted in that soft, late evening way when conversations grow gentler, warmer, more honest. Elise came back from the kitchen with a small bowl of sugared berries, smiling as she set them on the table. "Just a little something extra," she said. "I can't help myself." Mara laughed softly. "Your house is going to spoil me." "That's the plan," Elise replied. They shared the berries, talking about old friendships, holiday plans, and the simple joys that made life feel fuller. But even with the laughter and easy rhythm of conversation, Mara could feel something shifting underneath. Like a second current beneath the water. A quiet awareness. A gentle closeness she didn't know how to explain. At one point, Elise leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder. It was a sweet, familiar gesture one Mara had seen before. But tonight, something about it made her chest ache. Not out of envy, but out of longing for something she had almost forgotten she deserved. Connection. Warmth. Being seen. Daniel gently squeezed Elise's hand, then looked at Mara with a kind smile. "Do you have plans this weekend?" he asked. Mara shook her head. "Nothing special. Just the usual errands." Elise lifted her head. "Then you should come with us on Saturday. We're going to the winter market downtown." Mara hesitated. She didn't want to impose. She didn't want to intrude. But Elise seemed to read her thoughts instantly. "You're not intruding," she said. "We like having you around." "Truly." Daniel nodded in agreement. "You make things lighter," he said. "In a good way." The words landed deeper than he probably meant them to. But Daniel's voice was gentle, steady, sincere, and that sincerity warmed her more than the candles on the table. She smiled, a little shyly. "Okay. I'd like that." Elise clapped her hands excitedly. "Perfect. We'll make a whole day of it." Something about the way they included her so naturally made Mara's throat tighten. She wasn't used to being the person people reached for. She wasn't used to being invited into the quiet corners of someone else's life. Her emotions surprised her. She wasn't falling for anyone. That wasn't it. But she was falling into something, being cared for. Being wanted in a room. Being noticed. And that alone was powerful. As the evening grew later, the conversation softened even more, drifting into reflections about childhood fears, mistakes they'd made when they were younger, the dreams they still held on to. Elise shared a story about how she once spent an entire summer making watercolor paintings because she believed art could heal anything. Daniel talked about always wanting to build a small workshop in the backyard to craft handmade furniture someday. Then it was Mara's turn. She looked down at her hands. "I used to dream of becoming a writer," she admitted. "I even wrote little stories when I was a kid. But life happened. I stopped." Elise leaned toward her with bright, earnest eyes. "You should start again." Daniel nodded softly. "You have a thoughtful way of seeing the world. That's something you don't lose." Mara swallowed, the warmth in her chest almost too much. She didn't know how they did it, how they always seemed to open space for her without pushing or prying. Then Elise stood to refill her tea, leaving Mara and Daniel alone again. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft flicker of candlelight. Daniel's voice broke the silence, gentle, careful. "Mara, I hope tonight didn't feel strange for you." She looked up, caught off guard. "Strange? Why would it?" He hesitated, not in uncertainty, but in thoughtfulness. "Because sometimes," he said slowly, "a person can feel something shift before they understand why. And I don't ever want you to feel out of place here." Her breath caught again. There was nothing romantic in his tone. Nothing inappropriate. Just honesty. Warm, grounding honesty. "I don't feel out of place," she whispered. "Not at all." Daniel gave a small, relieved smile. And just then, Elise returned, cheerful and unaware of the quiet moment she had stepped back into. But Mara felt it. The shift. The warmth. The closeness she hadn't expected. The night was winding down. But something inside her was only beginning to open. Sometimes the moment that stays with you isn't loud or dramatic, it's the quiet one that unfolds when no one is trying to impress anyone at all. Mara felt that kind of moment forming as the night slipped softly toward its end. Elise settled back into her seat with her fresh cup of tea, steam rising in gentle curls. Mara watched her for a moment, admiring how warm and open she always seemed. Then her gaze drifted to Daniel, who had leaned back in his chair, relaxed but attentive. The three of them sat in a comfortable hush. Not awkward. Not heavy. Just peaceful, like the kind of silence only shared by people who trust one another. Elise broke the quiet with a small laugh. You know, I don't think we've had a dinner feel this calm in ages. Daniel nodded. It's been nice. Really nice. Mara smiled softly. I'm glad I came. There was sincerity in her voice, more than she planned to reveal, but it felt good to say it. And it felt even better when both of them smiled back, as if the night had meant as much to them as it had to her. Elise reached across the table and touched Mara's hand gently. Just so you know, you bring a lot of light with you. The words hit deeper than Elise probably realized. Mara swallowed, her eyes warming with emotion she hadn't expected. No one had said something like that to her in a long, long time. Thank you, she whispered. Elise gave her hand a small squeeze. Then she stood to start clearing the dessert bowls, humming softly. Daniel rose too, offering to help. But Elise waved him away again, teasing playfully, "You've done enough cooking tonight. Sit with Mara." And just like that, Mara and Daniel were alone again in the candlelit quiet. He settled back into his chair, folding his hands loosely. "Can I ask you something?" he said gently. Mara nodded, wondering why her heart suddenly thumped against her ribs. "What made you stop writing?" he asked. She didn't expect that. Not the question. Not the softness in his tone. Mara stared at the tabletop for a moment before answering. "I guess. I stopped believing I had something worth saying," she said slowly. "Life got busy. I lost confidence. And once you stop for long enough, starting again feels impossible." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "That happens to a lot of people. But it doesn't mean the part of you that needs to create just disappears." Her lips parted slightly. The way he phrased things always reached somewhere deeper than she planned. "You think I should try again?" she murmured. Daniel held her gaze. "With everything in me," he said softly. Something trembled inside her. Not romantic. Not dramatic. Just deeply human, being encouraged by someone who meant what he said. Mara felt her eyes sting. I don't know where I'd even start." Daniel offered a small, grounding smile. "Start small. A paragraph. A single page. Don't worry about perfection. Just write like you're talking to someone who already cares." Mara let out a shaky breath. "That sounds simple. In a beautiful way." "It is," he said. "You just needed someone to remind you." Before she could respond, Elise returned, setting a warm hand on Daniel's shoulder as she sat. "What did I miss?" she asked lightly. Daniel gave a gentle smile. "Mara's thinking about writing again." Elise lit up instantly. "That's wonderful. Oh, Mara, you have to do it. I'll read anything you write. I'll even bring snacks." Mara laughed softly, her heart full in a way she hadn't felt for years. The three of them talked for a few more minutes, but Mara could feel the evening reaching its natural end. The candles were burning low. The room had that soft, late-night hush that hinted at goodbye. When she finally rose to grab her coat, Elise wrapped her in a warm, sincere hug. "Come over anytime," she whispered. "Not just for dinner. For anything." Daniel walked her to the door, hands tucked into his pockets. "Take care of yourself, Mara," he said quietly. There was something in his tone, gentle, steady, and full of meaning she couldn't unravel just yet. "I will," she replied. "Good night." As she stepped outside, the cool air wrapped around her, grounding and sharp. The house behind her glowed through the windows, warm and golden, like a lantern she didn't realize she needed. She took a breath. Then another. Something inside her had changed tonight. Not in a wild, dramatic way. In a quiet, hopeful way. A way that whispered she wasn't as alone as she thought. A way that promised something gentle was waiting for her, maybe within herself, maybe beyond. She stepped off their porch, feeling a soft ache settle in her chest. A question. A wonder. A moment that made her heart beat just a little faster. The moments that stay with us aren't always the loud ones. Sometimes it's the quiet goodbyes, and the way they echo long after the door closes. Mara walked home that night replaying every soft moment, every word spoken with care, every look she didn't know how to interpret. By the time she reached her porch, she felt like the evening had left a warm imprint on her heart, a small change, gentle but certain. She didn't sleep much. Not because she was troubled, but because something inside her felt awake, in a way she hadn't felt in years. The next morning, the world looked different. A little brighter. A little kinder. Mara made tea, sat at her small kitchen table, and stared at a blank notebook she hadn't touched in years. Her fingers hovered over the page. Daniel's words drifted back to her. Start small. A paragraph. A single page. Write like you're talking to someone who already cares. So she wrote one line. Then another. And another. Nothing perfect. Nothing polished. Just honest. By the time she looked up, she had filled nearly half a page, something she hadn't done since she was a child. A quiet warmth spread through her, steady and hopeful. Later that afternoon, her phone buzzed. A message from Elise. Don't forget about the winter market on Saturday. We're excited to spend the day with you. And Daniel says we're grabbing hot cocoa first thing. Mara couldn't help but smile. She typed back. I wouldn't miss it for anything. The rest of the week moved with gentle ease. Work felt lighter. Evenings felt less heavy. And every night, she wrote a few sentences, even if they were messy, even if they were simple. Saturday arrived with crisp air and soft winter sunlight. Daniel and Elise greeted her at their door, both bundled in warm coats. Elise hugged her tightly, full of genuine excitement. You're here, she exclaimed. Daniel gave his warm, steady smile. Hot cocoa time. They walked together down the decorated streets, lights strung overhead, music playing faintly from little stalls. The winter market bustled with families, couples, and neighbors, the whole place alive with warmth despite the cold. Mara felt strangely at home between them. Not like a visitor. Not like an outsider. But like someone who belonged. They wandered through craft booths, laughed at silly ornaments, and shared a bag of roasted chestnuts. At one point, Elise ran ahead to look at a display of handmade scarves. Daniel slowed his pace beside Mara, hands tucked into his coat pockets. He looked at her with a soft, thoughtful expression. You seem lighter today, he said. I feel lighter, she admitted. Because you started writing again? Partly, she said. Mostly because I don't feel alone anymore. Daniel's smile was small but full of meaning. You're not, he said quietly. And you won't be. Her breath caught, not in confusion, not in longing, but in something far gentler. Gratitude. Warmth. Connection. Elise called their names from a few stalls ahead. Come see these scarves. They walked over, joining her in laughter as she modeled an oversized, bright red one that nearly swallowed her whole. The day passed in soft moments like that, small, warm, ordinary pieces of life that felt like something precious. By late afternoon, they headed home, the sky turning a soft shade of amber. Back at their house, Elise hugged Mara tightly before unlocking the door. I'm so glad you came, she said. You make everything better. Daniel nodded. And for what it's worth, we're proud of you. Mara blinked. Proud? For choosing yourself again, he said softly. For starting something that matters to you. Her heart swelled with emotion, quiet, unexpected, and deeply comforting. As the evening wound down and Mara prepared to head home, Elise squeezed her hand one more time. Remember, she whispered, you're part of our world now. Not just when we invite you over. Always. Daniel held the door open for her, offering a gentle nod. Good night, Mara. Walking home, Mara felt a soft ache settle in her chest, but this time, it wasn't loneliness. It was fullness. Hope. A feeling she hadn't known she was missing. She stepped into her house, set down her coat, and opened her notebook again. Tonight, her words came easier. Smoother. Warmer. She wrote about the winter market. About laughter. About the feeling of belonging. About how sometimes life doesn't change with grand moments, but with quiet dinners, soft conversations, and people who see you even before you see yourself. Her heart beat a little faster as she wrote. Not from uncertainty. Not from fear. but from something deeply, simply human. The feeling of stepping back into her own life, and finding light waiting there. When she finally closed the notebook, she whispered a small, grateful breath into the soft evening air. Some moments stay with you forever. And this dinner, this night, this beginning would be one of them.